another famous preacher. We have the old lights versus the new lights. The old lights are very orthodox. They reject the emotionalism. They believe in like rational spirituality. Your new lights are more emotional. Some of the characteristics of the Great Awakening: human sinfulness leads to eternal damnation unless you surrender to God and accept Jesus as Savior. Emotion is more important than the intellect. Personal relationships with God, not just about going to church, but actual personal actions, not just going through the motions. Deism sees God as the clockmaker, where he kind of got everything going in the beginning of the world and then took a step back. He just watches from the outside, winds it up when he needs to. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. Any questions about 1600s through 1700s religion? 1800s. We get the Second Great Awakening in the early 1800s. This is the antebellum period before the Civil War. The most famous preacher from that time is Charles Finney. One of the biggest differences is out of the Second Great Awakening, we get several reform movements. People are moved to act socially. Public education with Horace Mann. Prison reform with Dorothea Dix. We get the utopian socialism. This is where we get those collective farms, collective living. Cults would be another way, yes. The women's rights movement, the temperance movement, and the abolition movement. Josiah Strong publishes a book called Our Country in 1885. It's going to promote overseas missions to spread and civilize those backward people in other countries.
What's nice?
Of course, we're always nice.
Yeah.
The social gospel movement, it's not officially known as the Third Great Awakening, but social gospel movement, late 1800s, early 1900s. This goes along with the progressive movement. Charles Sheldon wrote a book called In His Steps. It challenges people to live up to their faith. Kind of sparks the what would Jesus do question. So there's an idea to improve the world through charities.
So that's pretty much where it originated from, that whole idea?
That book. It's actually like a tramp, hooker, prostitute person that goes to a church and challenges them to actually live out what they say all the time.
That's nice.
1900s, the fundamentalist versus modernist movement in the 1920s. This is where we get the Scopes trial, where William Jennings Bryan makes himself look quite foolish.
That guy just can't catch a break.
Where he said everything in the Bible should be taken literally, and so the guy, Clarence Darrow, was asking point-blank questions. Bryan couldn't answer well. Did not go well.
He just couldn't catch a break.
Did you finish? Do you have any questions before you go? Charles Coughlin, 1930s. He is a Catholic priest on the radio. He has this idea of social justice. He's very open to speaking what he thinks. He's very anti-New Deal, anti-Semitic. He's fascist. He's... so they do take him off the radio and silenced in 1942. So after U.S. enters World War II, he's taken off because he is not promoting what is desired at that moment by the government. later in the 1900s, I know we have not gotten there yet, but just a quick little thing. The 70s through early 2000s, we have what they call the rise of the religious right.
Oh.
Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, I put a few names down for you, like Billy Graham, John Piper. It's like the moral majority. Some of their beliefs are pro-life, anti-evolution, prayer in schools, United States is a Christian nation. I mean, you've kind of been living through some of that right now.
Yeah, I went through
So, are there any questions about religion?
I think we're good.
Okay, what's a short one I can finish? I can finish. Okay, go to page 25. I can do immigration in 15 minutes. Okay, well, I can finish most of it. We did do Supreme Court cases, right? Okay. I should really, write this stuff down. Immigration, page 25. Before 1880, immigrants came primarily from Northern Europe. The Great Migration of English Puritans, we already touched on that. There's when about 30,000 come to Massachusetts, 1630s and 40s. The Scottish Irish and the Germans come in the early 1700s. The Irish come in the 1840s. That's where we talked about the potato famine. That's also where we get the Irish need apply. The Irish,
Really?
yeah,
There?
because they are different. They're typically Catholic in a predominantly Protestant nation.
So even if we weren't racially different or whatever, we'll find a way to separate ourselves, basically.
Yes. Either because of language or religion, social customs, and the Irish stick out. They have red hair a lot. So.
Oh, no, red hair.
After 1880, the immigrants began coming from Southern and Eastern Europe. That's called new immigration. Most immigrants settle in cities because of the manufacturing and factory opportunities. And immigrants provide unskilled labor very cheaply. Strange. One thing that's not on here, but we have talked about, are the settlement houses. With Hull House with Jane Addams, about not everyone is so anti-immigrants. The settlement houses do provide some help and aid to the immigrants. We also have immigrants coming in with Boss Tweed, and he will help you if you're willing to give him your political loyalty. Why do you look so confused? You gave me the... The Chinese Exclusion Act prohibited any more Chinese immigration. They had been coming to work on the railroads for a short period of time and then heading back to China, but they are prohibited.
So they were basically not staying. They were just doing their work and then leaving?
Some. Some would stay, some would go.
What would be the problem with that? Because you wouldn't be overrun, really.
Because they were taking jobs away from Americans who were already here.
All right.
People are so mad about that.
Yeah.
That's why people are mad now, even if you're just sending jobs overseas, that's jobs Americans could be working, and instead it's somewhere else overseas. People do get mad about that. People get mad, that's why in the 20s, we're very isolationist. We cut off immigration, and then the Great Depression hits, and we really cut off immigration because, we don't have any jobs for them. I mean, we talked with World War II. They sent a ship of Jews back to Germany because they were like, we don't have any room. We have a bad economy. Worldwide, everyone has bad economy during that time. And so, like, people don't even come in as much during the Great Depression because why come to another crappy situation? You might as well just stay where you are. So, National Origins Act we've already talked about, and I will stop there because.
Hi, Subai.
Oh, that I don't know. I think we called it something else.
Wasn't it Theodore Roosevelt?
No.
No, not Theodore Roosevelt?
Would have been Taft. I think we called it someone else, and that's why it's not familiar. Let me look that up and get back to you on the gentleman's agreement.
Don't follow us up.
'Cause I think we called it something else, kind of like the National Origins Act and like the flashcards when we were reviewing for the 20s. It says the Emergency Quota Act sometimes, or the Immigration Act of 1824. Like, are there questions? We'll finish immigration as we get to them. Just like we stopped with the Iron Curtain because we haven't gotten there yet. By next week, we will have gotten to most of that.
Yeah.
We can be done for today.
Hey, Sebastian.